Okay, hello. What the country I chose to speak on is Brazil. Brazil, I'm excited to talk about because it was really interesting learning about the history of Brazil. It's actually really interesting for me to learn about any of the history of anywhere, I guess. It's always intriguing to me. So this was an exciting assignment. And so let's get into Brazil. So Brazil was discovered in the 1500s during a war commanded by a Portuguese diplomat. So there was a fleet commanded by a Portuguese diplomat. His name was Pedro Álvares Cabral. Pedro Cabral landed in Porto Seguro. I hope I'm pronouncing these somewhat right. It was between Salvador and Rio de Janeiro. However, there is strong evidence that there were Portuguese adventurers out there before he claimed Brazil himself. So he may have been preceded by others, but he is who took the claim to fame. Cabral took the claim to fame, I think, though, because in 1494, the two kingdoms in the Iberian Peninsula divided the New World, and Cabral landed in what we now know as Brazil. He basically claimed it through this war, making himself King Manuel the first of Portugal. King Manuel the First of Portugal. And at this time, Brazil was not an independent country, and it took a couple of years to get to that point. But just to talk about this country, before that happened, slavery was huge. I thought this was so interesting because I think in America we focus so much on slavery and how it's affected us nowadays. I think we've even seen so much of it this year. And I almost came to believe that slavery was an only us problem. So it was really interesting and really cool learning about how the entire world as a whole has taken slavery, learned through it, gone through it, figured it out, and become equals with everyone now. And I just think it is very awesome. And so slavery was huge. When Brazil was becoming an independent country, African American slaves were being imported throughout the entire world. And 41% of African American slaves ended up in Brazil. To put that into context, only 5% were imported into America. And wow, America 1 was bad. Let's be honest. It was bad back in the day. Obviously now it's leaps and bounds better. And so to think that 41% were in Portugal must have been chaotic, especially when the war broke out for freedom and justice for those slaves. So then, eventually Brazil grew agriculturally so strong. There were so many slaves there doing all the work, and it's almost amazing to see the work that they've done. It made Brazil what they are today, but it's so sad considering that slaves were kind of the ones that did all the work. But anyway, the progress did come in the 1600s, and then in the 1700s, gold was discovered. Gold was discovered, and this helped Brazil. This helped with their communities. It helped them become the public that they are. And when gold was discovered, the slavery economy boomed even more. I mean, it just probably went crazy, and new markets were opened. They were trading with other empires, trading slaves, trading gold, trading agricultural supplies. Brazil's culture started to then become very, very diverse. It started becoming diverse because obviously the country was booming, and there was so much immigration coming into the country because it was doing so well, which is a great thing for them. Immigration is great, and it does kind of remind me of America here. I think America is booming. We obviously have our faults, but we have been considerably more booming than other countries that I at least hear about. So it makes sense that we have so many immigrants wanting to come in, legal and illegal, literally. So anyway, eventually a government was formed during the war that they wanted to declare an independent country, and also so that slaves were no more, basically. Which then the king's son decided to declare war himself, making this a three-pronged war. So at first it was between the kingdom, and there was not yet a government yet, and Portugal, and then they eventually separated into two wars between the country and then another war between who they were trying to become an independent. And eventually Brazil became an independent country, which is great, proud of them. And investments for Brazil never stopped. They just kept booming at this time, and they just did not slow down. They did become one of the largest coffee markets, which is honestly kind of great to hear for me. Whenever I go visit, I'll definitely want to try the coffee. I'm sure it's amazing over there. And eventually there were tons of immigrants coming in at the same time, and finally this all ended in 1888. So slavery ended in 1888, and actually they became an independent country in 1889. So like these two wars, 3 wars basically, were happening around the same time. It did make me a little proud of America for ending slavery 20 years previous, but no slavery should ever be allowed. So either way, what are you gonna do? It's over now, thankfully, and we can learn from it. And I think we can learn from both countries in a sense that everyone is created equal, male, female, anything you want to identify. I think we are all equal. We're all human, and that's great. And anyway, back to Brazil. They became the United States of Brazil, one nation under their president now. They do have like a very confusing political structure under João de Seca, and that was 1889. I believe I already said that formed their government. And just wrapping this up, there's been just amazing triumph of nationalism, even though it has its social struggles and a very complex political structure I would love to get into more, but I'm already 7 minutes in. Brazil, I think, has done some great things, and I want to talk about more of them, and I'm excited to write the paper on them. And it's cool that they are like the leaders in football, aka soccer, which is really fun to learn about too. So anyway, this was a great country to learn about, and I'm excited to learn more.